This episode of the Party Loaded podcast is proudly sponsored by Audible.com. Check out their awesome catalogue of audiobooks with over 180,000 titles to choose from. And be sure to grab a free audiobook on us and support the show by visiting audibletrial.com/endgame.
Let's party.
Hello, and welcome back to Party Loaded. It is the one and only hit of everything great in the world of video games. I'd like to give thanks tonight to the patron saint of video games, YuGiOh, because he's sponsoring our show. And I would also like to say welcome back to Jam, who has been released from video game rehab. That's the story we're going with, right?
Really? No, they'll never catch me.
Awesome.
Don't be silly.
Absolutely. So Jam is here, of course. My name is Luke Retallick. I'm here. We've also got Matt Diet, Mr. Game Dad, and Christian Paulson Brown rounding out the crew. And we're going to bring you everything tonight about what's going on, and now with 100% more puddles, just for those of you out there who are wondering.
Good. We don't want to make people angry by depriving them of puddles.
No, exactly.
Don't remove the puddles.
No. We've got plenty of puddles, more puddles, salivating at the thought of more puddles. So anyway, enough of that absolute bullshit. Yeah. I thought I would mention though, like there's a couple of interesting things that are happening this week that are kind of video games adjacent. One of which is today. In fact, it's actually the 20th anniversary of Google. Did you guys know that?
I did not know.
Yeah, 20 years ago, apparently, Google was formed as a company. But more importantly, yesterday was the 20th anniversary of Metal Gear Solid. So there you go. Long time ago, that thing came out. So I want to throw to each of you now, and I think most of you should be able to answer this. Jam, I'm not sure if you can, but let's see. Best Metal Gear game. Christian, go.
3.
3 is your pick? All right.
Yeah, 3's my pick.
Matt, what will you say?
I can't answer this question because I've never played any of them.
Oh my god! All right, we're going to correct
Yeah, me too, pretty much.
I've played 1, 2, 3. I didn't play 4 or 5. So
okay,
out of 1, 2, and 3, 3's my favourite.
All right. I will confess I have not played 4. That's the one missing off the list, and I have heard from a number of people that that's their pick, so I probably should get to that at some point. But 1's my pick, just for nostalgia purposes. I think
1 is great.
Pretty revolutionary stuff in that game, yeah. I was just reading today, actually, that apparently in Tokyo, they're actually going to be setting up a real-life Metal Gear Solid sneaking game, which is kind of done like... a public sort of ARG style thing.
That is amazing.
Yeah, it's cool. So, I mean, just like in the actual Metal Gear computer game, it's going to let people sort of sneak into Shadow Moses, the facility in that game, and avoid detection to destroy a Metal Gear. And if you look at all the photos of what they're setting up, there's a team of 1 to 3 players that they let in. They're given a codec that they can use during the mission to get all the comms and stuff. There's stretched out red wool for like red dot laser sights. They can hide in the boxes and sneak around in the boxes. And apparently there's a bunch of guards as well that when they're alerted, I don't know how they've done this. There might be like a spring up thing behind their back. They have the exclamation point when they get alerted.
That's super cool.
So, yeah.
Is that, and it's like official licensed, is it?
I think so.
Metal Gear, or is it like knockoff? Because I'm surprised Konami's doing that with how sort of crap they've been handling Metal Gear in the past number of years.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the way that things like this typically go, especially in Japan, as we've been hearing lately with what's been happening with all the video game bars and stuff, is that they kind of do need that official nod to get away with doing stuff like this with the IP. So I would assume so. I hope so. They're using the
like
logo.
that. Yeah, okay, they're using their logo. Saying it could be like that Mario Kart, real-life Mario Kart thing that goes around Tokyo, which is completely unlicensed, and Nintendo have tried to like shut that down a couple of times, but they keep dodging it. But
that came to Australia recently too, and there was huge controversy around that because of how crap it was.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Like giving out suits to people that hadn't been washed and had been used by God knows how many people, and
Ew.
Sounded pretty gross. Anyway, so
that sounds unpleasant.
Video games. The September Madness has definitely commenced, and we've got a bunch of stuff that we've all been planning to chat about this week. But Jam, you haven't been here for a couple of shows, so we definitely should catch up with you first. So, what are you playing?
Definitely. So I managed a little holiday escape to a place with limited internet, which was lovely, and finally sat down with my Switch and played some Zelda. Yay!
So first
It's
impressions
adorable.
of Breath of the Wild now that you've actually gotten around to it. What do you think?
Finally. I like it. I love it. I'm really enjoying it. It was a lot easier to play on holiday when I had a lot of downtime than it is when I'm back in real life and have my internet and friends are playing stuff online. But it's beautiful, and I can see why so many people have enjoyed it. I'm loving all of the little Korok puzzles and just exploring. You know me, the second I get free reign and don't have to follow the main story quest, I'm just off.
Yeah.
Gone.
Perfect game
Seeing
for you
what
in
I
that
can
respect.
pick
'Cause
up and cook.
you definitely don't need to follow the critical path story in that game much at all. Like, you can do whatever you want. Yep.
Yeah, so I think I've done about 9 shrines, I want to say.
Okay.
I don't even know.
Yeah.
I've just been kind of wandering. But it's gorgeous, and I'm looking forward to playing a lot more. It's something I can easily get lost in.
Are you playing handheld mode or TV?
Yeah, handheld.
Handheld?
Yeah.
How do you find it's all right?
It's not bad. I don't know, the Joy-Cons are a bit awkward. I'm going to be investing in a Pro controller.
Okay.
But it's good fun. And I mean, I was in, gorgeous countryside. So I was sitting outside wandering through the hills in Zelda, and you look up and there's just hills.
Yeah.
It was just heaven.
That sounds like my kind of holiday.
Yeah, it was the best. Didn't miss you guys at all.
You may want that's a whole separate issue.
I'm kidding.
Yeah. I was going to say, with the handheld mode, you may want to stick with that for some of the shrine puzzles later on, because in my opinion, some of them are definitely better with handheld mode.
Well, yeah,
Really?
and I'm
Yeah.
loving being able to angle my shots and things by tilting the Switch.
Yeah.
It's
So
an amazing
you
mechanic.
can always do that because you can tilt the controller. What I found was in handheld mode, it's actually made it more annoying because you're tilting the screen at the same time. Whereas when you're just tilting your controller, the screen stays stable.
No,
so-
mate, it's like
Well,
when
I'll
you're 8
have
years
to
old and
try
you're playing
both.
racing games and you move the steering wheel with your head and to get better. That's how it totally works.
Just lean into it.
I didn't like Zelda handheld mode. I found it frame rate a bit choppy and a bit hard to play. But
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'll have to try the other. I also managed to squeeze in some snipper clips with family, which was funny. Not enough. Not as much as I wanted, though.
I think that game may
yeah.
feature a bit at our upcoming PAX travels, perhaps.
Yes.
Yes.
It will.
I have a copy.
Oh, really?
Literally,
So good.
I bought 3 games. I bought the Lego City, I bought Breath of the Wild, and I bought Snipper Clips. And because it just looks so funny. So
Yeah. Oh, I got some Crypt of the Necrodancer in too. I got that on the Switch. That was fun for when I wanted some funky music. It works really well on the Switch.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah.
Anything
But
else?
since I got back in the last few days, actually, I've tried out 2 new games. I got pressured very easily by our friends. It didn't take much at all. Jumped on Saturday and Alan Fax said, "We need a third for the King." And I had no idea what that was. But it turns out it's a cute little roguelike RPG with turn-based stuff. And it's really neat. It's got adorable graphics. And when you're in the world moving around, it's a map-style hex grid.
Okay.
And you can move together or split up if you want. But when you encounter a monster, depending on the monster's difficulty, it'll pull in allies and enemies within a certain number of hexes to build the combat. So if your friends are too far away, they can't help you in the fight. So there's an incentive to stay together, an incentive to split up. Yeah, and it's lots of fun. We're actually doing pretty well. I thought we'd die really fast, but we've managed to get through a chunk of the storyline, I think. And in the second big dungeon we got, in the dungeons you just move through fight sequences. So it goes from, beautiful hex to 3 versus 3 usually combat, turn-based. And it's cool because your class decides what your best skill is and how you fight. And then there's a random number generator that determines how good your hit is, for example. Okay. So there's a lot of chance to it, but you can, bump up your odds and stuff. And it's hard to describe. There's so much to it being an RPG.
I'm just looking at a brief
leveling.
demo video now. I'm getting vibes of Armello crossed with old school Final Fantasy.
Sort of.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's adorable. The gear that you get, you sort of want to max out your main stat that you use for fighting, because you basically want to, you get these, God, what would you call them? These glyphs up in front of you when you're going to make an attack. you might have 3 or 4, and you want each of them to be a hit from the random number generator to get a critical or to do the most damage. But the accuracy of that random number generator is based on your base stat and the complexity of the attack you're trying to do.
Okay.
So there's something called focus that you can spend, but it runs out really quickly because you want to use it all the time, to bump up the percentage, which means, you're more likely to get a hit on every single one and therefore land a critical. Like, it's hard to describe without seeing it. And when I jumped in, Alan Fax had already played for a bit. And I was a little bit lost, but I caught up pretty good. And I've played 5 hours and we haven't died yet. We've been very, very, very close. You only get a limited number of lives for the whole group.
Doesn't sound like a roguelike at all. Yeah, it's been 5 hours.
We're doing surprisingly well. We've clinched some freaky wins when we probably should have been wiped. And the whole idea is you're going around the kingdom trying to stave off chaos because the king's been killed, and there's like a chaos meter up the top, and some of your rewards can be to reduce the chaos, so we keep bumping, it back so it doesn't sort of make everything stronger and nastier. But it's really cute. I recommend it for anyone who's interested. It's only $20 US on Steam from iNote Games. I'm having a lot of fun, and I know I'm going to play a bunch more.
I may be dragged into this one too. Oh, actually, no, I got tons of stuff to play. I shouldn't say that.
It's only 3-player co-op, though. It's really unusual, that number, but it works really well. I think it was 4-player, you'd get too bored because of the turn-based thing, waiting for each other.
Yeah.
But 3 actually seems to be a really good balance for the game. Yeah.
Good.
So I'm really enjoying that. And I've also jumped into Scum. I have succumbed to the hype.
Scummed.
Scummed, yes.
I was thinking it, but I couldn't make it work, so well done, Christian, for trying.
I mean, that's what I was going for. I used that word for a reason. But yeah, it's fun. I'm enjoying it. I've got friends who are not. It is still early access, very reminiscent of DayZ. Big, huge survival thing where you're theoretically some prisoner thrown into a fight zone and there's robots watching you and filming you. It's good. It's complicated. It's difficult to pick up at first. The crafting is bizarre. And then there's a tab. I don't know if any of you have seen this yet. There's a metabolism tab. Has anyone seen it?
No.
Yes. No.
Oh my God.
A metabolism.
Everything.
Oh, dude.
Everything. You've got like heart rate and thanks. Heart rate and brain waves. You've got all of your vitamins mapped out and the levels. You've got the contents of your stomach, your intestine, your colon, because it's very important when you need to take a crap.
Oh my God.
You can see the food that you're digesting and how it's feeding back up. You can track your hydration, your sicknesses, your temperature. It's an insane page.
So if you
and
need
you look
to
at the first time and you just go, nope.
So as a prisoner, if you need to smuggle drugs, do you actually see that on the dynamic graph of your colon?
I've not had to do that. I don't believe that's a choice. Maybe they'll work it in a future update.
Sure.
It is early access still, but it's good. The graphics are really quite nice and it's really well put together. I haven't had any glitches or issues. Much better put together, structurally than DayZ was for a very, very, very long time, and also PUBG. But
I'd had it in my
some
mind
people are
this was
getting
a
a bit
battle royale.
bored.
Is this not a battle royale?
No, it's just a big map. I think it's 4 clicks by 4, and it takes you maybe 10 minutes to get across each one if you're running. But, you run out of stamina if you run too much.
What are the enemies? Is there other people or is there computer enemies, AI?
There's 64. The public servers are up to 64. You've also got little robot drones that don't attack you, but they come over and film you and light you up, which gives away your position. But there's big mechs around key areas like military bases, and I've not gone too close to those. But my favourite thing so far is I managed to meet up with Ari and Lee, and we're running around the bush. We got some basic gear. We found some gear. Then we found a bear, and we chased it down. Managed to kill it. I didn't have a ranged weapon. I only just today on a quick session I played managed to have a gun with matching bullets for the first time.
Oh, so you did shoot it. You weren't barehanded.
I threw a pitchfork at it and missed completely. But Ari had a gun. They managed to kill it. And then what we did, I was just sitting there learning how to craft and whatever, butchering the meat slowly, like, this meat was spreading out in concentric circles around me as I butchered each part, and I was fascinated by that. And I turn around, and Ari's been grabbing, like, the paws and the skin and the head and turning them into, like, wearable things. So then they dressed me up as a bear, and I was running around with bear paws on my feet, bear claws on my hands, and this bear head. And it was stupid, and it was so much fun until I got shot by someone because I was not being very careful. I've only had that one death, but, you know, it's got some fun silliness to it. I've only put a few hours in. I'm going to be playing more. I'm looking forward to seeing what else they're going to introduce. A lot of people are getting bored by it pretty quickly because they want to be able to do more in the world. But one of the most interesting things is you don't get penalized for the third person view. Okay. So everyone, you know, can see their character in front of them on screen. If your character is behind a tree, but you looking over their shoulder have a wider vision around the tree, anyone your character can't see in the field ahead of you goes invisible.
Oh, that's smart. That's really smart.
Yeah, they were explaining it to me. I didn't understand what they meant. So they said, go behind a tree. It's like, yep, okay. Now face right up to it. Yep. Okay, now angle the camera. Can you see me? I'm like, no. And they're like, lean out. I leaned out, and suddenly they just popped up in this
That's
bit
really
I was
cool.
already looking at. Yeah, it's really clever. So you don't get penalized for those cheeky shits who... I mean, I guess we've all done it. I've done it. Take advantage of the third person.
Use the mechanics, yeah.
Swivel. Yeah. Quick, shoulder check that shit. Yeah, so it's got some really neat ideas. The metabolism screen, you have to look it up. It's incredible. I had to kill Ari with an axe to the skull today because for the longest time he's going, I've got hypothermia. I don't understand. I'm trying to keep warm. I'm near the fire. I'm wearing all these layers. And we're going, can't help you, man. Sounds like you're doing the right thing. 10 minutes later, he's like, oh, it's hyperthermia, not hypothermia. I'm cooking. So he stripped off and jumped in the river, and we are just losing it. But by that time, he was so dehydrated and sick that he couldn't get water down or food or medicine. So I just had to kill him.
Oh, no, amazing.
Inflammable.
Yeah. So we've already had some frigging hilarious stuff happen, and we're still trying to figure out how the game works properly, but
that's great.
It's good fun.
There's been a bit of stuff on Scum in the news this week, actually. It's been trending very well on Twitch. Devolver said that it's been their most successful game launch, early access launch ever. So that's good for
them.
But
it's only $20 US.
The Nazi tattoo thing?
Is that what a bit of controversy about the Nazi stuff. So apparently there was a couple of skins in game with Nazi symbolism, and because you can see third person at the back of their heads, it was in full view kind of thing. It was an interesting one because I got thinking about that, and I mean, yes, I understand that there's problems when you give people the tools to be able to role play as those kinds of things, but at the end of the day, it is a prison setup, so it's not out of the ordinary to have people having.
Yeah, you still don't want to represent that in your game.
Yeah, that was their statement for why they included it, was to represent like prison life. But no, I think there's a big difference in inhabiting that character and killing that character.
Yeah. You only get to choose like 2 sets of tattoos. So I've got like a Maori-looking guy with tribal-looking tattoos. It's very limited. There's no female characters yet. But one interesting thing is your characters, you get to slightly stat out at the start and determine what they focus on, whether they're better at running versus, perception, which determines if you're able to spot people, if they're prone. Like similarly, people can go invisible if your character's too nearsighted to spot them at a distance, which is amazing. And those stats can apparently, and I don't understand it yet, but they can develop over time and you can build them up throughout your deaths. So some progress and also some flaws carry through to your next life, which is really interesting. And you've got this like fame thing ticking up in the top right-hand corner as you do cool things and, live longer. And that just determines how well you're succeeding on the server, but you can cash that in when you die for perks like spawning on your team.
Oh, okay.
And things like that. So it's interesting. I don't understand how all that works yet because I've only died once, but there's some really cool ideas there that I want to explore more.
Okay. We'll keep an eye on it. Early access, so who knows what's going to happen from this
Yeah,
game.
$20 US.
All right, let's throw the potato to Christian. What's going on in your week of gaming?
Yes. Now that I've finally freed myself from the Hearthstone mines,
Temporarily. Let's be real.
Temporarily, yeah. I've actually played some other games. So I have started and I'm quite far into Hollow Knight. I know a couple of other of you, Luke, you were playing it, and
Yep.
Adrian was playing it too.
I am still playing
And,
it, but
yeah.
I do have 3 other big games on the go currently, so it's getting
Sure.
its turn in. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm maybe like 18 hours into it, so I put a fair chunk of time in. It's a really long game. I have a feeling that I'm not even close to the end at all. Like, it feels like I'm approaching the halfway mark, and for
Wow.
a Metroidvania game, that's big.
I have heard 60 hours. So
What? 60?
Yeah, apparently.
That's
And
huge.
that's
I
before
was
the recent
expecting like
DLC.
30 or 40.
So, yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if that's a
crazy.
completionist run, but yeah, that's what I've heard at least. So
Yeah, but no, I'm absolutely loving it so far. It's contender for possibly my running game of the year. Yeah, I'm freaking in love with it. The language of the game just like speaks to me. Like the gameplay, the movement controls just feels super tight. Like the wall jumping and dashing and the actual just base mechanics just feel so satisfying. And there's lots of little things I love, like the way the game communicates the different hidden objects and items, and you sort of slowly learn to recognize if you can hear a particular kind of noise in the environment, then you know that there's a hidden like grub somewhere that you need to go and find, or if you hear a character like laughing or making a particular noise, that you'll know you have to sort of go and find them, and doesn't like spell these things out to you, but just by playing through the game, you just pick up on these different cues and sort of learn this language of what you're kind of expected to do to find all the hidden secrets. And yeah, it's just fantastic. And the whole Dark Souls-iness of it is really cool. My own criticism of the game might actually be that I think it leans into Dark Souls maybe too much. Like it's so dripping in Dark Souls inspiration, and like the sort of bonfire system and the way the NPC quest lines work, and obviously the body collection, but that's become a bit more mainstream now. And then the overall sort of story of a broken down Gothic city with a couple of like mysterious gods that are sort of lingering around. It's just super Dark Souls, but that's great. And I think that there's a bunch of games which are following that sort of trend, but I think of everything, this is like more directly a Souls-like than other Souls-like games. But no, it's fantastic.
good game is good. Yeah. Anything else? That's a ton of hours in Hollow Knight, though. That's a lot.
Yeah, just that. And then I have still been doing my daily quests in Hearthstone, so I haven't completely broken free, but I haven't been putting any real time into it. And that's about it. I've been moving house this week, so not much time for anything else.
Nice. Well, I'll just chuck in a quick one for me, and then Matt can have the floor with some fun stuff he's been playing. So I'm mostly continuing with Yakuza Kiwami 2 this week. So I have made a heap of progress on that game. I'm about 14 chapters deep now, and these games tend to be around the 15, 16 chapter mark. So I think I'm probably at least 2 or 3 away from the end, but I'm getting there. Man, this is definitely my favorite Yakuza game. If I had to pick, Yakuza Kiwami 2 is top of the heap right now. It is so freaking good. And it's not just all the weird stuff that I spoke about last week, but okay, it's all the weird stuff I talked about last week. There's a lot of funny stuff. Like the side quests are a highlight in these games, and when they get them right, it's really something else. The story in this one is excellent. The characters kick ass. Some of the real key fight scenes and reveals and things are really compelling and quite gripping, and definitely some twists that I didn't see coming. And one thing I love, actually, having played Yakuza 6, where they actually do the recap of all the previous games with the key stuff that happens, they were really clever about that recap, as I'm now finding out, because they actually omitted certain things that are surprising me now playing the one that's previous to that in the series. Like I'm not actually having it spoiled. Yeah, which is good. Like I know the key beats and how the ending, like in a general sense, is going to work out, but all the stuff that matters during that journey, I have no idea about. So that's really, really cool.
Oh, that's magic.
But man, the one weird thing that I discovered, which I posted some pictures on Twitter during the week, I ran into a mob boss of another Yakuza family, and he sort of, you have to beat up his goons who are sort of causing you some trouble, and then he sort of steps out and says, "Oh, I respect you. That was awesome. Checking my my young upstarts. They're out of line. Don't worry about them. Let's go have a drink." And he takes you into this place, and I was like, okay, so we're going to a bar or something. I'm going to find out more about his family. And he takes you into this place. It's obviously a fetish parlor of some sort. Like, I'm just like, okay, what is going on here? This is definitely some sideways shit. And you get put in a room with a young girl, and she's sort of dressed up in, a fairly, motherly-like outfit, nothing too sort of role play or anything like that. But the kid is like the room is like a kid's room. Like there's wallpaper with sort of numbers and stuff up on it. There's a bed there with like folded blankets and stuff on it. And you're just like, what is going on here? This is odd. And then she starts talking about changing your clothes and whether you want to drink. And I'm just like, hang on, there's something wrong here. Where is this going? Turns out it's a fetish parlor for guys who like to go in and get treated like babies and literally dressed in nappies, fed bottles, and spanked by women.
Dear.
And you walk out of the room after realizing what's going on, and all of that Yakuza family are on the floor, like whining and screaming and like with pacifiers and all this sort of shit. And you're just like, what the fuck is this? And then you basically, try and get out of there, and they take offense to it, and you beat up a massive gang of man babies. It is hilarious.
Oh my god.
So yeah, can highly recommend.
I think I saw that on Jerry Springer once.
It would not surprise me. Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to kink shame anybody, but man, there's some limits, and this game just pushes them. It's great.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, a bit of WoW,
Well-
a bit of Halle Night, but apart from that, I'm really looking forward to what's coming over the next few days. So Matt, what you got going on?
Nothing nearly as weird. I'd be remiss if I didn't call out World of Warcraft at least a little bit. I did some grinding over the weekend and finally unlocked the High Mountain Tauren. So I went and race changed my monk that I'm currently playing into a High Mountain, which is fine by me because they're gigantic moose people.
Mimo will be jealous. She's been looking forward to that.
Oh, they're so cool. I was honestly quite surprised that they didn't take an opportunity to give him kind of a jokey Canadian voice. But instead, he's just got this really deep voice, like this super baritone voice. I just love it. I think it's really cool. It's such a cool race to play as. But other than that, I've played some new releases over the last week. So I played a bit of Need to Know, which I backed on Kickstarter. It's sort of in the same vein as Orwell. I've talked about it very briefly before, where I thought it was like a more kind of open-ended kind of Orwell. It's got a bit of a clunky interface. It's got a very complex interface when you get into it. It's actually a bit confusing when you first start playing, but once you do start playing, it's pretty straightforward Papers, Please style gameplay, where you're basically an agent, just a brand new agent at this new secret government agency in the United States that's investigating terrorism, basically. And you have full access to people's online profiles and their phone data and that sort of thing. And you're trying to find potential threats to the country. And they add in a whole bunch of interesting story stuff. Like I got contacted by this one guy from basically part of the same organization that you're in. And he's basically put together this group of concerned agents, basically, who are using their powers illegally to continue their work outside of the office. So, like, they might be investigating a person and they're like, well, we are pretty sure that they're guilty of something, but they have a limit as to how far they can go and investigate stuff. And they basically offer you to join them and work outside office hours to get a little extra cash on the side and continue doing your duty to your nation by providing them with illegal information on people. To which I said, sure, because just to kind of see, like what the full extent of what the game has to offer. But it's very reminiscent to the sort of stuff that you had in Papers, Please, where, you'd have people come along and be like, hey, we'll just slip you some cash to let us through the border.
Yeah.
In this case, it's kind of the opposite. It's somebody, it's a border officer basically paying you to keep more people out and to collect extra illegal information on them. But yeah, it's really interesting. It's got a really neat story. So it kind of takes place in an alternate reality where there was a major terrorist attack in the United States a few years ago, where some terrorists managed to actually hack into a couple of different nuclear facilities in the United States, and they made them all basically blow up. And whole big areas of the United States became super irradiated. No terrorist organization ever actually took responsibility, but there was somebody that put their hand up and said, I totally did it. And the United States basically went, nope, that person's a hoax. And yeah, so that's kind of the state at which the present is in when you're in 2018 when the game starts. But it opens up with a flash forward to like 2034 where you're seeing your character who's much older than when you start off. He's like a teenager when you start the game. And he's very clearly like locked himself into this server room and he's trying to pull some data on this character named Solomon. And clearly the government doesn't want him to do that. So there's clearly something else going on there. The story seems really cool. The reviews of the game aren't, like, they're a bit mixed, but I'm actually having quite a bit of fun with it. I'm having more fun with it than I was with Papers, Please, honestly.
Ooh.
Like, I think that there's much more story that's going on in between. Like, so every day, in the same way as you have Papers, Please, you have story popping up, and there's not quite the same pressure there to get things right. Like, I'm completing my daily check on all these different people by midday, basically. So it's much lower pressure.
It sounds like an evolution of Papers, Please.
Yeah, sort of. It's a much lower pressure. Yeah. But yeah, I'm very much actually enjoying it. I can totally recommend it to people to go and check it out. The other one I was playing was 2 Point Hospital.
Yep. Been looking forward to this one coming out for a while.
Yes, it's actually it's really lovely and streamlined. I'm having a lot of fun with it. The animation has a real kind of Aardman animation feel to it. And it's really quite funny. Like they make a lot of really good jokes in the game. It's not like laugh out loud funny, but it's the sort of game where I sit down and I play it and I'm listening to the radio and they're cracking some jokes. They kind of get a grin on my face.
Just like
it's really
the
funny
weirdness, like sim games, how they kind of do the quirky kind of yeah.
The disease names are funny too. Jason's been playing while we've been playing other stuff and filling us in whenever the funny lols pop up. It sounds hilarious.
Lightheadedness, is one of my favorite ones. It's one of the first ones that pop up where you have people that are turning up with lightheadedness. And if you just take it at face value, you're like, okay, well, so they're getting dizzy. But no, they start actually coming into the hospital with light globe heads. It's like, oh, okay.
This reminds me of the old Operation board game where you have like water on the knee and you literally pull a bucket out of a dude's knee kind of thing and that sort of stuff.
Yeah. But other than that, like, the game very quickly, it goes from 0 to 100 in no time flat, right? Like you started out and it's like, okay, well, I'm creating GP's offices and I'm creating just an examination room and I'm creating a pharmacy and this all makes total sense. Like there's nothing weird about this. And then they're like, okay, well, we have to make a facility to treat people with lightheadedness by screwing their heads off and inflating a new head for them. It's like, what the hell?
I love it. I might have to play this game.
It's very good, but what I will say is that every single time I've booted it up and sat down and I've been playing it, I've been like, man, this is fun, but I could be playing Jurassic Park Evolution right now. This is kind of a news thing, but apparently there's been an announcement that they're releasing a free update on in mid-September that's adding a challenge mode. So I might actually go back and pick up that again at that point. But yeah, I'll be playing a lot more 2 Point Hospital for sure. It's good fun. I'm a couple of hospitals in thus far. So yeah, it's really neat.
Mm-hmm. Well, Adrian, I know for a fact, managed to dabble into a bit of WoW during the week. He succumbed and started playing a bit of that, which is hilarious. He's not here to tell us about it, though, because I don't think he'd mind me saying that he's off doing a singing competition. So he's going to be travelling and absent from the show for this week and next. But we do have his fantastic quartet to take us into the next segment.
Now it's time to hear some gaming news. Time for some gaming news.
Right, so games news. We got some stuff to talk about. Not a whole lot this week. It's a bit quieter week than normal. But given that it's a pretty big thing this week, I would like to kick off with a little snippet of Spider-Man stuff. So put your hands up. Audio format. Luke, you're an idiot. Say if you like photo modes in games. Yeah, photo modes in games.
Yeah.
Pretty cool. So what about photo modes in games that are based on visual mediums like comic books? So Spider-Man, as it turns out, is going to have a kick-ass photo mode. And that photo mode, in addition, is actually going to let you make cool custom comic book covers out of the shots that you take in games.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah. So
that's neat.
There's a whole bunch of photo mode features. You can have obviously change your field of view, focus, aperture, all that sort of stuff. But to give you the comic book feel, there's going to be color filters, vignettes, film grain, different stickers you can have. So you can have you can do it as in like complete selfie mode as well, and put on stickers for like speech bubbles and sound effects, like the thwip sort of sound effect and that kind of stuff. You can put the Marvel Comics cover badge on the shot as well. And that's all going to be available day one. Pushing me that
much closer.
Yeah. I think the only thing that's missing from this, like comic book covers are awesome, but the ability to actually go one step further than that and actually do full comic book sort of panels, and do like a page of them, that would be unreal. So,
but you know what else though? Mm-hmm. If you can then take that photo and go and sell it to a newspaper in game.
Yes. That'd be so
amazing.
Good.
That would be pretty amazing.
Like cash money.
Yeah.
They go, oh, no, that one's no good.
Yeah.
You don't get money for that one. Damn it.
Yeah. I cannot wait to see the creativity that's going to come out of people on the internet when this releases.
Yeah.
There's going to be some good stuff.
They should at least make like a Twitter account that's like the Daily Bugle and it's just all people's pictures of Spider-Man.
Yeah.
I have every confidence that this will happen, like whether it's their intent or not.
Yeah.
So. Pokemon Snap, but Spider-Man.
Yeah. Yes. Exactly that. All right, what else we got, Jam?
We've got a little No Man's Sky news. They're about to drop their weekly content, starting with a mission somewhere in the galaxy. If you go and complete it and take the stuff to Polo and Nada, you can get rewards. There's like some new in-game currency. It's called Quicksilver, and you can use that to buy cosmetic-y stuff. So nothing game-breaking. But yeah.
Bases as well, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, an emote and some decals, some character customization, which is pretty cool. So yeah, over the coming whenever, they're going to be adding more and more items. I think more than 50 was the number. Is that correct? Yes.
Wow.
For this bunch anyway, yeah, I think they're planning a lot more in the future.
Yeah, in the near future.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's nice. I mean, it'll give people something to do, a reason to travel to a new part of space, and perhaps make them a little more likely to encounter some others.
The buzz around that game still seems really positive. Like, I'm seeing people posting so many pictures still, even weeks and weeks after launch. Like Jason Imms, who we had on not that long ago, his Twitter account is basically 50% No Man's Sky images at the moment.
They're so pretty. Like, it just looks like the kind of game that you can just chill out with, right? Just kind of explore the world, take really pretty photos, and then call it a day. Like, I love that. I think that's really cool.
Yeah.
Ditto.
Do love a happy ending to a tale like that. But speaking of happy endings, BioWare.
Oh dear.
I don't know if I'd call it a happy ending.
No, they do specialize in a few of those, but maybe not this time.
No, not this time around. This time around, they've very much clarified that there are no happy endings, not as far as romance goes. So I'm a very big RPG fan. I love BioWare, but I'm definitely really nervous about Anthem, and the more they talk about it, the more nervous I get. So the news they came out with was that, in the past week, they've got a few different modes. There's an exploratory mode. You can play just completely single player, go out and explore the world without much risk. They've got obviously the co-op mode where you're going out into the world and you're completing quests and you're kind of pushing the story and narrative forward. And then you've got the storytelling mode type thing that's going on inside of Fort Tarsus, where you're basically progressing your personal story. And BioWare, when they've talked about the game in the past, because there's a lot of people that are equally nervous about the game, have basically said that Fort Tarsus is where you're going to get all your BioWare-style storytelling. But in the past week, they've gone and announced that BioWare-style storytelling only involves 2 dialogue options. So I'm really not sure what we're getting is a BioWare RPG as much as it is it's basically a Destiny-esque thing with a bit more dialogue options, right? Dialogue at all, because it really, really worries me. Especially when they're saying that the storytelling method will go on to influence future Dragon Age and Mass Effect titles. And they did go and clarify that on Twitter by basically saying that means stories with definitive ending that leave future titles open. Rather than the kind of, big open-ended endings like what we got with Mass Effect 1 and 2 that never really ended that storyline. Apparently Anthem's going to be a bit more like that. Anthem's also a much more a living world, right? Like it's a games as a service title rather than Mass Effect and such, which were this is the game you're getting and the story you're getting when it's launched. I kind of hope they're not moving into that territory where, you know, they have a definitive ending, but then you're waiting every couple of months to actually get certain questions answered as they add more story. Like, that really worries me. That sounds like a lot of EA influence over BioWare. Maybe, I don't know. But yeah, I can't say I'm excited about Anthem. I'm kind of super nervous.
The structure sounds to me a lot like Destiny in terms of that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm not as big a fan of Destiny as I think some other people on the podcast. Particularly the storytelling is dreadful. I think in Destiny.
Well, I think it's safe to say that that's not the main pull of Destiny. So if that is the main pull of the game and that's the style they're doing it in, then maybe that's a bigger concern.
Yeah, but that like sort of running around online with a couple of friends and just shooting stuff, like that's fun, but that's not what I want in a BioWare game. So
yeah, like I adore Destiny. I adore it, and the story can be actually really inaccessible, I think, is the biggest problem with it, because it falls into the old Bungie problem of, like, the best storytelling isn't in the game. It's outside of it and all this other media content. I haven't sat down and played any Forsaken yet, so we'll see how much that changes with Forsaken. But
we're about 4 hours away, Matt. So
yeah, I know. The big thing about BioWare, though, is the games have always been about storytelling, and this feels like they've been kind of shoehorned into making a title that isn't what they're best at, right? And that's really, really what worries me, especially since the thing that draws me to Destiny isn't the storytelling, it's the gameplay. It's that really satisfying first-person shooter, whereas what I've seen of Anthem doesn't look like satisfying gameplay. It looks like the sort of stuff that I would get from WoW, and I wouldn't say the reason I keep on playing WoW is because, you know, it's a lot of fun to spam keys and see big numbers, right? like it's that whole thing of playing with friends. So if they're going to lean on that, then they really need to talk more about the social aspect, because the storytelling aspect isn't enough anymore. Like, yeah, I'm really worried. I don't want to see BioWare fall apart. Like we saw what happened with Andromeda. I don't want to see another BioWare studio get closed.
Yeah, no, definitely. So. Yeah. Well, I mean, fortunately, it looks like we're going to get a chance to see for ourselves a bit earlier, which is cool. So there's going to be an early release preview demo that comes out about 3 weeks before the game's official launch in February next year. So it's good. We'll be able to make our own minds up. And, you know, if it's not our cup of tea, February next we're going to have a fair range of choice available from what we've seen. So, yeah, going to be a bit of a nuts time. So that's all right. All right. Well, one last story to close out with. Christian, take it away.
So I just wanted to give a nod to the PlayStation 2 and a final farewell, because it was just announced that Sony is closing the PS2 aftercare service, which is kind of like the very last official support for the PlayStation 2 by Sony. So they stopped manufacturing them in... Yeah, press F for the PS2. They stopped making them in 2012, but they continued to repair them and support them until just this week. So yeah, bye-bye PlayStation 2, finally. But so
it's extraordinary.
Did you all have and love a PlayStation 2 at some point in your life?
I've had two. I loved the PlayStation 2.
I did too. Yeah, I have
games.
So many good memories of playing Metal Gear 3 on that thing. It was awesome. Good times. One of the best consoles ever, I think.
Yeah.
I played all of like the Jak and Daxter and Ratchet and Clanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I made a quick list of my favorite PS2 games, and I wrote down Okami, Resident Evil 4, Shadow of the Colossus, Metal Gear Solid 2 and 3, Final Fantasy X, God of War 2, and Katamari Damacy. That's some of my favorites.
I didn't realise that Shadow was on PS2. I thought it was PS3. Oh, there you go.
No, PS2. Yeah,
Wow.
it got a re-release with the crappy 3D TV option on PS3, but it was originally PS2.
Yep. Nice. No,
Yes.
PS2 was back when I was, actually able to convince my wife to play video games with me. She was a mean headshot in Siphon Filter, I can tell you that. She was super good. Yeah. But no time for any of that madness anymore. Leave it all to me. That's all right. All right. Anyway, speaking of madness, that's a great segue into tonight's topic. And I'm going to let Matt introduce this one because this was his pick, as it turns out. So, Matt, what are we talking about tonight?
We're talking about Cultist Simulator, which I'll preface. I selected and suggested to the team to play that, and it got picked as Game of the Month like almost immediately. But I suggested it because I thought it was actually kind of unique as a game. Like, it was very experimental and also very divisive in the sort of opinions I've seen about it. So I thought it'd be
our
really
chat
quite
this week
fun
has
to
been
discuss.
great fun.
Yes.
Yeah, it's been good.
So yes, in Cultist Simulator, it's a really weird kind of narrative game where you're playing cards and you've got these nodes that you're basically playing cards to in order to make sure that like you're earning enough money. So you're playing a job card onto like a work node basically. And then it's spitting out money for you, or it will spit out other things that are useful to you. So you might work on something that's not going to make you money. You might work on your painting skill, for example. You need money to survive. So if you run out of money, you'll start losing health and you'll die. You can get randomly sick, which keeps on killing me. So like my character has just run out of health sometimes, then just gone and died. The game is very much. It's a narrative title because the cards and the sort of storytelling that pops out of the nodes is very good, but it's very much experimental in the way that it's kind of delivering that story, because I've never seen a narrative-based card game before. So, yeah. I'm interested to hear what people thought of it.
Well, we should probably mention as well, the developer is Weather Factory, published by Humble Bundle, and it's a pretty recent game too. It was released on the 1st of June this year. So not that long ago at all. You can get it on Steam for PC for US $19.99 at the moment. I think we should start with Jam, because Jam, you've been posting a stack of images during the week about how you've been playing this thing, and I think you may in fact have the most hours in, except for maybe Matt, for how you've gone. So yeah, what was your journey through Cultist Simulator?
Well, it was interesting. So for the first 40 minutes, one of the most interesting things about the nodes and the cards is that time is a pretty significant factor. The nodes, when you play a card to them to activate them, will take a set amount of time to complete. And then as events progress, you get more and more nodes for different things, and it gets really chaotic. I didn't realize until 40 minutes in that I could pause the game.
Oh, no.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And it was absolute chaos. I had so many nodes up, so many different card types. Some of them are things that you acquire permanently, like resources or contacts or locations, that sort of thing. Others are very finite, and they only hang around for a certain amount of time. So if your nodes are full and the thing you need to, the way you need to interact with them is already occupied, you may lose the opportunity for that time. So I was not reading things carefully. I was just trying to keep up with all of the things that were
I can't imagine how you would have gone without
out.
pausing. That would have been a nightmare.
I was pretty good. I winged it. I was just throwing stuff wherever I could to see what happened. Because there was nothing telling me what was going on. And as things increased and increased, I started figuring out some bits and pieces. So I'd focus on them for a little bit, but then at the expense of something else. Like Matt, I started running out of money. And once you do that, you start getting sick. And if you can't throw health into that sick node, you'll die. So that is how I died in my first game, after about 2 hours, I think. And that was interesting. I'd gained a pretty reasonable understanding of how some of the nodes worked and what they would produce when I interacted with them in certain ways. But I'd had trouble at that point. So when you acquire contacts, for example, people that you know, some of them you can start recruiting to your cult. You sort of want to, get to know them a little. So in the talk node, you can talk to them about stuff, about your cult, about lore. And at one point, I realized I needed to try and start promoting them. Did not figure out how to do it in the first game. So that sort of hobbled me a bit. So in the second game, when I started off again, I had this neat thing where you can, you get to carry something over, or you get to choose how you start your next game. And I can't remember what all of my 3 choices were, but I chose to be basically
physician,
a rich kid.
Detective, and the rich kid, I think were the 3.
Yeah. So I picked rich kid because I'd had a money problem in the previous game. And that was really handy because for a fixed time, I had a pretty steady income without having to work so much. But that only lasted a certain length. And then something happened. I got a chunk of inheritance. and then things started getting weird. But what I'd focused on when I started my second game was meeting people and trying to start up my cult, and then figuring out how to promote them within the cult. Because I'd seen at some point, like, you start throwing cards in different spots to try and figure it out. And in one of the nodes, if I'd put my cult card in there, there was some kind of rite I could perform. But at no point did I figure out how to do any of the stuff. So anyway, I focused on trying to figure out how to do that and increase my resources. I bumped my health right up, my reason and my passion, because you use those to do all sorts of wondrous things. And then I started bleeding money, so I got a job. Little rich kid got a job. And then I realized to perform the rite or promote anyone further, I needed to know more about, the dark arts. I needed more lore and knowledge. So I started spending any spare money I had on books, but that just made money even more scarce, and I started getting sick, and then the cops were investigating me, and I was trying to hide the women that I'd locked in my cupboard from them. Everything basically started falling apart. They started sort of manufacturing a little bit of evidence, and it was just tentative, but then there was a second card that was tentative evidence, and they hang around for 500 seconds or something in game. So sure enough, when the next investigation got triggered, they both went whoop and became slightly more damning evidence. I'm going, oh God, what do I do? I'm trying to figure this all out reading the card, but there's no clear instructions anywhere. I managed to luck out, and I did the talk function on one of my disciples, and then when it goes, what are you talking about? I dragged in the evidence, and somehow, even though it said, I think that there was a low chance, he managed to destroy it for me.
Oh.
And I was super relieved. But next minute, I talked to the other dude, and he accidentally goes crazy. So I don't know what happened there. And someone was demanding a sacrifice, but the women in my cupboards weren't good enough. And I'm going, come on.
So did you ever
none
get
of that
to
makes sense? But
Did you ever?
I was so thoroughly entertained. Yeah.
I was gonna say, did you ever actually get to the Dreamlands screen?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I did that, and I never could figure out if I was doing it right. You dream on a particular way. I think I had the Way of the Woods.
Yep.
And if you dream on it long enough, and if you feed cards into the dream sequence that are required, I think it was passion, because you've got to be passionately following the dream. If you throw reason in there, that doesn't want reason. This other screen pops up where you get to make a choice. And I had no idea what was going on, and I was just choosing at random. And you get some cards out of it, but I'm like, crap! Was there something else I meant to do? I had no idea.
Yeah.
I was lost. But yeah.
One of the best reviews, and it's kind of the review that I would have actually posted on Steam if somebody else hadn't done it. But I would have gone the opposite direction. So it was a review that was do not recommend, and it was just 2 words. It said Confusion Simulator.
Yes.
So I would have actually gone the opposite direction.
Chat as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I would have actually given it a thumbs up, do recommend, and called it Confusion Simulator.
Yes.
Because I actually kind of enjoy that whole it is very, very opaque. It is not telling you anything, but it does drop hints in all the different pieces of text that it starts dropping on you. And sometimes they're much more brutally forward about what you need to do. So with some of it, it's okay, well, I've dreamed on this thing long enough, but now in order to progress it, I need to work. And it will say very, very clearly in bold work. It's okay, well, I need to drag that card onto the work node. And then I'll see, okay, well, this requires me to get these other things. And that's where the game kind of falls apart for me. Because it's okay, well, how do I get those other things?
That's where I struggled. In my second playthrough, when I was trying to focus on promoting people so that I could try and get to the point where I could complete a rite, it was saying that I needed particular types of lore at a certain level. And that's when I realized I hadn't been investigating books enough. So if I'd studied them more, I could drag out more pieces of lore and secrets, and finally figured out if I had, it wasn't very clear, but if I had 2 of the same type, I could start studying them together to turn them into a higher level.
Yeah.
But it's involved and you have to feed through lots of stuff. And if you don't, I don't think they level as well. I'm not even sure. But I was bleeding cash so bad trying to get all of these books that I could pull apart for knowledge that I accidentally finished my second run through after 4 hours by going completely legit and getting promoted at my job. I was devastated. I wanted to unlock the secrets of my cult. I think it was called the Order of the Bloody Cup, not my choice. And I was so keen to try and succeed in doing this right, where apparently I could raise things from the dead. I don't even know. And I accidentally went legit. I was so sad. Damn it.
That's hilarious.
So,
But yeah, it doesn't hold your hand. And
No,
I think
not at
that's
all.
fascinating.
I will say, like, before we start getting into the things that we disliked overly much, the thing that I do kind of like is that it's not a story about a single character. It's a story about a group of characters. So you like my game, I started off like every single person's game is going to start off with them being a nurse, and you basically work a single day as a nurse before the game's like, cool, that's it, you're fired. And you have to kind of figure out things on your own from there. And that first playthrough is very much designed for you to fail. Like it's like there's just so much going on, and it's so opaque that you're not going to know what to do to succeed. And so you die, and you realize that death isn't kind of the end of the game. It's going to give you all these options for new characters that you can follow on from. So my game went, you know, my nurse character died, but when I started up the next game, I was playing a detective. And that detective was actually investigating my nurse's friend and the cult that my nurse had started up, and ended out arresting the friend and sending them off to jail. And the detective got a big promotion. But that whole case had this huge impact on him where he just couldn't let it go anymore. Like he needed to understand what they were doing. And it turns out that actually revealed some more stuff about the lore of the universe in Cultist Simulator, where it turns out like there's this whole big thing where apparently cults are really, really common. And there's this whole agency dedicated to just bringing down cults. And they have this sort of Spanish Inquisition type thing going on where if they think you're even slightly dabbling in cults, they'll start investigating you. And so my detective was able to get kind of by because he's a detective. He's going off and investigating this stuff. But he kind of got stuck with this case because, you know, they're dealing case cards to you and you need to keep on working. I just got dealt this dead-end case where I couldn't ever actually solve it. And so I got fired from my job, which immediately actually created a whole bunch of issues for my detective because now he's interested in all this occult stuff. He was originally able to get by because he's interested in it, but he's a detective, so you know he's just investigating that stuff. Now he's just interested. He hasn't got the detective's title. He's a fully shamed detective, and so he just gets all this much more heat on him. And I remember he actually got arrested after further investigating the cult. But then the next playthrough I did, I was playing just this day worker again, like the nurse. And they were pursued by the detective's old colleague that put the detective in jail. So it's just this ongoing storyline that's following through. My day worker, like this was me picking up the game again after like 2 weeks. And that turned out to be a massive mistake because I had no idea what I was doing. They very quickly died. And it actually got me an achievement and unlocked another playthrough type where you could play a doctor. And that doctor, that you start off that playthrough as the doctor, with them basically talking about the fact that they were in the hospital dealing with your last character as a patient as they died.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Yeah. So I think that's
idea.
really fascinating. Yeah. So the game just kind of flows through all these multiple different storylines. I really like that. Like it doesn't suddenly failing doesn't feel like a failure because you're picking up the game again with another story where it's like, well, this character has the chance to be more successful than the last, you know?
Yeah.
So we were talking more. Yeah, we were talking not too long ago about like death mechanics and what makes for good death mechanics. And I really like the death mechanic in Cultist Simulator. I think it's a really smart idea. It feels almost like they've taken some influence from roguelikes in that respect. Like you're able to try something new and different every single time you start it back up, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Propels the storyline, like the death itself propels the narrative forward.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right. Well, Adrian's not here to give his thoughts, but I do have one quote from him that I just want to read out. And it is, come back to me literally flipping off my computer monitor.
Yeah.
Suffice to say, he was not a fan of this game and got very, very angry at it very, very quickly. So, Christian, you want to go next? What are your thoughts on it?
I'll take the lead. So I'll preface by saying that everything I'm about to say, imagine Adrian echoing it, but about 4 times as negative. So I think that Confusion Simulator is a good name for the game. I would also call it Cooldown Simulator because I felt like I was just watching timers go down and I didn't really understand half of what they were. And it gave me like a bit of it felt a bit like an RTS where there was a lot of pressure to micromanage a whole bunch of different things and I wasn't sure exactly what to do. And I know that, you know, from talking about the game and reading about the game, that's kind of the point, but it wasn't fun for me. A lot of the stuff you guys are talking about sounds cool, like this idea about dying and then it continuing and picking up your previous character as like part of the story. I didn't get any of that. I did 4 playthroughs, but every time I started with the same type of character because my approach to it was rather than be confused trying something else, I want to just figure out this one character that I've started, like the one where you work as a nurse for a night or whatever.
Yeah.
I want to just figure that one out before I try something else. And so it was the same experience for me each time. Like I would work, get fired or whatever, and then have the same sort of basic experience. When I would start to like explore the city, I would get some like different locations or whatever, and I'd meet some different people, but it felt structured very similarly. And yeah, a lot of the things to do with like upgrading cards, I couldn't figure out, like, and the thing with cards having timers where if you need to use them, in a certain amount of time or otherwise they burn up. That was really annoying me because I had no idea what the cards were supposed to be used for. So I would just have like a vitality card and then it would disappear after 2 minutes and I would have no idea what I was like sort of supposed to have done with it or whatever. And then even the sort of resources, I guess that you'd call them, down the bottom of the screen, there's like 5 different numbers.
Yeah.
If you hover over those, it doesn't tell you what they are. Like I'm sure you can kind of figure it out by looking at the cards, looking at like the properties of the different cards and what they sort of represent. But I really wish that it would just tell me what those icons down the bottom of the screen mean. So I found that my experience was just every time I played it, I died because I ran out of money and got sick and starved to death or whatever. I couldn't stop that from happening. I even like read a couple of like tutorial articles like explaining the basics. I watched like a YouTube video about like surviving the first 20 minutes of Cultist Simulator, but I just didn't find that it just didn't click with me. And I found that it didn't feel like I was exploring. It just felt like I was failing. Yeah. That's kind of the vibe I got from it. I do think that if I was in a slightly different headspace, I could put more time into it and get more satisfaction from it. But possibly because I had just started playing Halle Night at the same time, and every second I'm playing Cultist Simulator, I'm like, I just want to get back to Halle Night. Like it was very hard to put time into it, knowing that I had to work to enjoy Cultist Simulator, whereas Halle Night was just like instant gratification. So
I think the mind frame's a great point. I happened to be when I picked it up the first time, I happened to be in a mood where I wanted to try something new that I had zero expectations for. Yeah. And that probably helped dramatically in picking it up.
I think part of the reason why I personally enjoy it was because I really like the sort of mind-bending puzzles that you would end out with when you're doing an alternate reality game. And like, you know, you've got all the pieces of information there that you need to start working out what the puzzle is about, but you have to work out how that all kind of fits together. And I do enjoy that about Cultist Simulator, but it's also the kind of game where I couldn't sit down and play it for 3 hours straight without going insane myself. Like,
I love puzzles. I love puzzles. I love like problem solving. I love like logical thinking and lateral thinking puzzles. I didn't get that impression from this game. I just felt like I was failing, not because I couldn't solve the puzzle, but because I didn't know what I was supposed to be solving. Like I didn't know what the question was, let alone trying to figure out the answer.
Yes.
And the other thing that I would say too is I wouldn't mind that as much if I didn't also feel pressure at the same time. So if it was just all these cards and you can play around with them and put them in different slots and different results happen, but there was no pressure, I think I'd enjoy that a lot more. But because there's always that timer going where it's consuming your money and then it starts consuming your health, that extra layer sort of took away my ability to enjoy the figuring out phase. So I think I would like this game a lot more if there wasn't any like time-based pressure.
Yeah. What about you,
Luke?
So,
Hey.
Jam, you and I have known each other for quite a long time, right? You've got a pretty good feel on what I like and don't like. Where do you think I'm going to land on this game, if you had to guess?
I am thinking that you did not enjoy it.
Thinking I did enjoy it. All right. So my impression of Cultist Simulator is that I think that this game is a piece of art and it is an absolute work of fucking genius, is my opinion. I fucking love this game. Yeah. So, okay. Now, I heard everything that you guys said and like all of the sort of mixed bits and pieces. Like, the funny thing is I can actually have my complete sort of positive view of this game and still agree with everything all of you've said.
Yeah,
so
100%.
Because I think that at the end of the day, like as much as I love this game, I can also recognize elements of it that make me furious because they seem like, in terms of the design choices, there are some absolute pig-headed choices that have been made. And I wasn't really clear on, like, Matt, I can't remember, Christian, it was you that shared an article in our chat during the week about some of the design philosophy behind the game and the sort of argument around including tutorial content or not. And after I read that, it made it very clear to me that some of the things that I thought were lacking in the game were stubborn design decisions that didn't have to be that way, but they had reasons for it, which I couldn't completely disagree with. But by the same token, I understand where the conflict comes from as a result of them. But like generally speaking, the way I look at this game is it's a complete emotional sort of trigger simulator. So every single thing I did in this game was triggering a really visceral emotive reaction from me at every step of the way. And that was the thing that I loved the most about it. So the absolute sort of bewilderment and fascination as you're sort of uncovering the game's mechanics and sort of layer by layer stripping out pieces of the narrative and trying to make sense of what's going on. Like, don't get me wrong, you have to hug the pause key in this game a lot. Like, I probably spent more time with it paused and sort of, reading cards and thinking about their associations with each other and what they could actually mean than I did actually sort of letting the timer tick down. So I probably spent longer playing it than maybe you guys would have. But like actually piecing it together and sort of, working out what the narrative was and trying to think a few moves ahead once I sort of started to see patterns and thinking about what this could actually be leading to, I found all of that so fascinating. And the fact that it was so bewildering and had all of those different layers of confusion, to me, that actually reinforced the theme perfectly because that's exactly what should be the case when you're trying to, research the occult. You're not going to understand what's going on. You're going to have a hint of this sort of,
There isn't a manual.
Yeah, exactly. There's a hint of forbidden power and, forgotten lore and, these things that give you enough information to create a lust for more without actually delivering it to you on a plate. And I think that it just simulated that so well. Like you just wanted a little bit more of the puzzle and a little bit more of the puzzle, and it was still confusing the hell out of you. And like when various triggers were happening during the game, like Matt, you spoke about how you were getting sick at different instances, and I can't remember which one of you said, but running out of money was a big thing too because you couldn't afford to sort of live healthily. And like this game had big instances of you having to look after your mental health, and there's sort of despair cards that flip up and you have to find ways to generate contentment to sort of neutralize them so that you don't go crazy and all that kind of stuff. Like whenever any of those things happen, like Jam, your example of getting hunted by the detective as well, like these things make you terrified when you're playing the game. You're just like, holy shit, how am I going to deal with this thing? And because it's got this real time timer on all of the effects, like you can pause, sure, but as soon as you want something to happen and you unpause and things start ticking down, the things that are threatening to undo you and like throw you in prison or like send you mad or make you die from illness, all that sort of stuff is ticking down as well, just giving you this feeling of existential dread as you're playing and making every decision that you make absolutely matter. So I didn't find it was an issue with regards to the timers sort of ticking down at all, because you can actually increase the speed at which the game plays and sort of pause it at leisure. So I was operating on max speed and just pausing often, and so the weight didn't really affect me much at all. But it just the pressure it created, and the fact that, like, if you were actually forming a cult and you were hunted by the law and you were going crazy, I can imagine you wouldn't be in the best frame of mind, and this simulated that perfectly to me. So yeah, just, oh man, and the different angles for success, like all of the different styles of a cult you could research, the dream mat, just, you know, yeah, man, I love this game. It's prompted such a reaction that I just did not expect. So
I'm envious because even listening to what you were saying just then, like different cult styles, I didn't even know. Like, I don't even understand that. I didn't get that.
The rabbit hole in this game is deep. Like, there is so much stuff in there, and like you get hints of it on the surface, like because what Luke said is exactly right? Like you find a piece of occult information and you read that piece of information. It's like, this used with other pieces of similar occult can allow you to summon demons, and it's like, what?
Yeah, I got some bits which were allowing me to like bring corpses back from the dead, and they were on a cooldown, and I knew that they weren't going to last. And
That's
I was
what
like,
I was trying to get to.
Yeah, holy shit! How do I use this?
An expedition into like some haunted hospital where I had to have certain level cult members, and I had to keep feeding it money and other stuff. It took so long. And at the end of it, it just felt like such a huge thrill and success because I had no idea what was going on or what it was going to achieve.
I literally sat for about 10 minutes making a decision on one particular thing that happened during my second playthrough, where I had a really sort of hardcore detective that was on my tail, and a lot of notoriety that was going to probably cause me problems if I didn't deal with it. And I had the talk panel open, and I realized that you could actually put the detective in there and talk to him and potentially use different things to bargain your way out of the situation. And I got the distinct sense that the different sort of detective roles in this game had different sort of trigger points, and if you found the right one, you could actually remove them from the equation completely. So I tried to bribe this guy, and it completely backfired. and basically increased the amount of evidence against me and the notoriety and all that sort of stuff. But then one of my cultists was going on a excursion to a local bookstore, and while there, managed to find a inexperienced bomb maker. And then I sent the bomb maker after the cop, and it actually managed to kill the cop. And I was like, "This
Mine didn't.
awesome."
Mine failed. It was a bit disappointing.
Oh, so good. Yeah, you cannot come up with this stuff on your own. It's just
Like,
it's surreal.
One of the other things you can actually do, like if you strike up a conversation with one of your cult members and you choose to talk to them about your cult, if you've got a currently active threat, you can choose to abduct them, and you can actually use them in cult rituals. So like, they become a piece of material that you can kind of use. They become one of your resources. I've never managed to do it.
Wow.
Like, the last time I tried, my person went missing and we just never found out whatever happened to them.
I managed to catch 3 women in cupboards. They weren't cult members, and I had one cult member go nuts trying to talk to him about the cult. He just snapped. He became a lunatic and then disappeared after 60 seconds, and there was nothing I could do. And I didn't have the resources to complete a rite where I might have been able to use that, corpse or whatever. Because they do turn into corpses, it turns out, after they're in the cupboard for a while.
Which apparently you can find ways to reanimate. I never managed to do it, but you can do it.
But I wasn't there yet. I was taking commissions. I was trying to investigate and get my lore up.
Yeah.
I could translate 3 different languages of script, and I still didn't have all of the knowledge I need. It's fascinating. Fascinating. Every time I learn something new, it's 6 more things that I have questions about and want to know more.
Yeah.
But in terms of the issues that Adrian and Christian both were having, I think we can't discuss this game without discussing the topic of a tutorial.
Yeah.
Like, whether or not the game should have had one, because that was the article that you linked, Christian, that was talking about that.
So what my feeling is that it's fine for this game to not have a tutorial. But what I think it should do is something like, when I died of starvation, it should say, hey, did you know if you do this, then you can earn, this is how you prevent starvation? Like, just tell me information to make my next experience better. Like, don't spell everything out to me, but just when I stumble, step in then and help me out just a little bit. I don't know. But then you can say, oh, but that's not the point. The point is just to, figure it out yourself, and it's mysterious and occult. But that didn't translate into fun for me. So
Yeah.
Like when I came back to it after my 2-week break, like I remembered the basics. Like I remembered, okay, well, if I use health in one of these nodes, I can generate vitality, which I can then turn into more health. And I need more health because only having one is really bad, because if anything goes wrong, I'm dead.
See, I never figured how to turn vitality into health.
Yeah. So what I ended up trying was I put health into dreaming. And the problem there is that if you put health into the wrong node, it then decides you've got no health and you immediately get sick. And so it turned out that dreaming about my health and getting so it's like that translates to you have an early night's rest. It actually made you sick. So I actually got horrendously ill and I could never recover from that scenario. And it turned out that if you put health, I think it's into working or study, that's where you actually...
Both.
Thinking, I think.
Yeah, something like that.
There's about 3 that they'll then produce vitality, which you can then, if you study... But it's exponential. You need more and more each time to generate more health out of it.
Yeah, but even just having 2 health, like in the start of the game, it makes everything so much easier because you now have some wiggle room before you die.
I never had more than one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Money's the other big one too. Like the second playthrough I did, I took the physician path. And the physician job I found is actually a really, really good one to have because it's one that doesn't give you a lot of restlessness or sort of ill effects from working. And it gives you a steady income and doesn't tend to deviate from that at all. So I actually, the thing I realized very quickly with this game is that you're much better off playing the long game if you want to progress far. It's when the game puts pressure points on you and forces you to do stupid things, that's when you really start to spiral downhill quickly. But if you play the long game and just like when the cops are on your tail, you cool down. Like you stick your head down, you don't do anything crazy. You try and just get them off your tail. Put your plans on hold, of doing your next big Rite or whatever, and just work, just accrue money, get your health on track, make sure your mental health is fine, and then when the coast is clear, then ratchet up the weirdness. So yeah.
So this is where I'm going to say something that actually disagrees with Christian, weirdly enough. But I do think the game would have benefited from a tutorial, but it should not have been on by default. The game should have basically had when you started it up, it should basically have popped up and said, tutorial, like a checkbox type thing, have the checkbox not filled. And when you mouse over it and you click it, it pops up with a warning that basically says, if you play this game with the tutorial on, you're missing out on the experience that we wanted you to really have, but it will give you a fair idea of how to play the game. I kind of think that a tutorial would actually have made it more difficult long term because you would have been kind of relying on the game to tell you how to do things rather than realizing that it's about that experimentation, and it's totally fine for that to not be everybody's game at that point, right? But it's very clear because they've talked about it themselves. Like the negative reviews have really hit on them because of the fact that there's people picking it up that are expecting to like the game, that are finding out this isn't a game that's going to tell me what I need to do, and they hate that. So I think it would have benefited from a very simple tutorial that at least taught you this is how you gain extra health. Because that's the big one. That's the one that will kill you every single time when you're first starting off. Like generating health and generating income are the main things you need to do to kind of stay alive in the game.
That's it for me. Is income and health. That's what I couldn't get a grip on that, and I felt like if I'd got a grip on that, then I probably could have enjoyed the rest of the game. And it frustrates me because it makes me feel like a gaming Philistine. Like it makes me feel like I don't dislike this game because it's like this creative arty game. That's not it at all. Like I love that sort of stuff. Like it's just something about this game didn't grab a hold of me. But I almost, after this conversation, want to go back in again and keep trying more because maybe I can like it if I can just find a footing.
Yeah.
There's a discussion to be had there about whether or not games should make you work to like them.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm very much of the opinion that like if a game can't grab me in the first 30 minutes, then that's the game's fault, right? Like it's not on me to like it. And I that's why I think Cultist Simulator is so divisive, because you either get it in that first 30 minutes or you get very pissed in the first 30 minutes, right? Because the game's just so opaque.
Not every game needs to cater for everybody, though. Like, I think the thing is that if this game broadened its structure to cater for a wider audience, it would do so at the cost of what makes it great for that select audience.
Exactly.
So,
I agree.
Yeah,
Look,
I do agree with that.
I mean, how divisive is this topic? I love it. Like, Matt, what you were just saying about this tutorial, I actually completely disagree with.
Me too.
Yeah, and the reason I do is because in terms of, like, for me, the whole tutorial discussion boils down to this. It's not a black or white that you have to have a tutorial or not. Like, there are a lot of different degrees of shade within that scope where you can have like tooltips and things that give you tutorial-like mechanics without actually providing a tutorial. Like,
That's kind of what I was going for.
yeah, exactly. Like, you can just have like a couple of hints, even if it's a clue thing. And what you mentioned, Christian, with regards to giving you a hint after one playthrough when you die, that's maybe one way you could do it. It could actually be like completely built into the random mechanics of the game too. Like when you're dreaming, for instance, maybe like one of the additional bonuses in addition to the cards you get is maybe it could give you a clue about a game mechanic. You know, stuff like that. You could build it in super easily without compromising the game's theme. But I think that I mentioned before the stubbornness and the pig-headedness of the game design. I think that they had this vision of not providing any tutorial information or any sort of guidance whatsoever to keep that theme intact. And I think that while I admire how steadfast they are in that, and I think I understand why they did that, I think that stubbornness to even yield a little bit has ultimately cost them an opportunity to give them, you know, a little bit more I guess a smooth entry into the gameplay without costing the experience or the narrative. Because in reality, all that's going to happen by having like a toggleable tutorial is it's no different to what exists now, which is you choose to either play the game with nothing or you go and consult an external wiki. That's the toggle, essentially.
See, I disagree. I disagree. That article Christian linked stated that they went back after the late decision that confirmed that they weren't going to have a tutorial, and they added text to the game to provide clues on how to progress. And the clues are there. If you examine a vitality card, I believe
there's a few
it explains that with other vitality cards you can generate more health from them. I think for me personally, and the reason that I became so intrigued is that it had just enough hints about different things to keep me invested and experimenting. And I would throw my focus onto one area, like how do I gain more reason so I can keep my boss happy without going nuts. So for a short time, I would focus on that, learn that mechanic, which happened to carry over to passion and to health. Like they're very similar in that respect. And suddenly I learned that I was able to, you know, push those up quite high. And I managed to get 4 to 6 of each of those as a resource. And I was able to stop worrying about them and shore that up. Pick another card, another tiny facet of this game. Focus on the text and learn. And for me, it was recruiting. How do I meet more people so that I can gain more, you know, influence for my cult, that sort of thing. I thought the level was superb and just right for me.
Yeah, I think like for me, the big thing, because you're all exactly right. Like I don't disagree at all about the approach to how a tutorial should be done. Like more kind of hinty text would be helpful. But I think that the big problem that I was having every single time that I came back to it after a break or when I first even started playing was that I was trying to figure out everything. Whereas maybe what would have been better would have been to focus on one thing. Because the vitality basically saying, you know, you can use vitality to create vitality, that's useful. But how the hell did I create that vitality in the first place? Because I don't remember. Right?
That was my experience,
Yeah, because like, okay, well, I have this card that suddenly popped up. I know I've just recently grabbed a bunch of cards, but where the hell did that come from? How did I generate that? Because I could use more of it, right? Yeah. And so you kind of find yourself like it's almost one of those games where you need to play it old school with a notepad right next to you to basically say, okay, experiment number 1, I'm using this card in this node. Yeah. This is the output I'm getting, right?
We will never have the time to do this, but it would be almost a perfect game for us to play together as a group so that we could discuss it as it's happening. Yeah.
Oh my God, the friendships that would be ended. Because I would say, no, bitches, do it my way.
Like, I think it's really cool. Like, the reason I love this game is probably more as a game designer than or a game developer than as a game player, because I love how unique it is, how they've taken this really bizarre approach to telling a story. But at the same time, there's this frustrated part of me as a gamer where it doesn't do quite enough to make me want to play it more.
Yeah.
Like, I keep on having to fight through to really, dig my teeth into that thing that I love about it the most, which is the whole discovery component. But it can be so easy to lose track of that when the game's also really high pressure. Because you're like, okay, well, shit, I'm dying. I need to drop everything that I was currently doing to figure out how it was that I was generating health before, right?
Ooh.
Like, yeah.
What you just said about like writing it down in a notepad, that just gave me an idea for what I'd love to see in the game that I think would help my problem. That would be if there was a log of what you'd put in, like a timeline of what, like, the cards that had come out of what portals based on what. Like, if that was in the game, that would really, I think, help me.
So one of the things that I noticed while playing it as well that it is a little bit frustrating when you notice it. So if you put a card into Dreaming, it will do the countdown and everything like that. But if you're not paying attention, it might actually start another countdown.
Yeah.
And it will pop up
sequence.
Yeah, it's a sequence. It'll pop up dialogue in that sequence that might actually be beneficial and drop you hints. I've noticed that on a couple of occasions. But when you're balancing everything else that's going on in the game, it's such a mess. It's like you're trying to manage so much, but I totally get that that's what they wanted, right? It's just I feel almost like you need to go in there at some point. And I would say, Christian, this is advice for you. Give up on the whole nurse thing, like, because the nurse playthrough is very much like, that's hard mode. If you can if you can kill your nurse off, like die of health issues, and then play as a physician, the physician, as Luke said, is great, because you can just keep on throwing your job into that work slot, and every single time that work slot completes, you've now got 2 gold that you've got 2 coin that you can spend, and you just keep on throwing it in there, and like you get up to 10 coins in there now. You've got a nice amount of spending money that you can focus on putting other things in that slot for a while and play the long game, like Luke said.
Yeah.
Then there are totally different playstyles. I love the detective. The detective seems like the sort of thing where I think there's probably an ending where you can just shut down the cults, basically, as the detective. It's totally different type of playstyle. You're not focused on building a cult. You're actually focused on resisting that cult's influence and playing that. But at the same time, the detective has its own problems where it's like, okay, well, I'm working on a case, but I can't get any evidence, and I'm getting to the point where they're going to kick me out of the police force. What am I supposed to do to fix that? So each one has their own problems, but certainly the physician that Luke was talking about thus far seems to come with the least amount of things attached. Like, you can just keep on working that job every day, and nothing seems to be risking you about getting you kicked out. So experimenting with the different playthroughs, like there's definitely stuff in there that's super helpful to playing it again.
This conversation's definitely got me interested in going back in, I think. And I reckon I am going to have a Word document open and write down the results of every card I play. I think if I do that, that might help me get a grip on it. So I think I'm going to give this game another shot.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, man, I've got to hand it to you, man. What a great pick for the discussion it's created at the end of the day. This has been a fun ride the whole way through.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry I made Adrian hate it.
I felt
really
I don't
bad.
hate the game at all, but Adrian does seem to hate the game.
Yeah.
No, it's good.
From what Adrian had seemed to be saying, like he can see the potential to like it if he's in the right headspace for it, and I think that is absolutely an opinion I share. It's just I'm in the headspace for it more often, I guess. But yeah, I can totally see why it's such a divisive game, but I really enjoy it at the same time.
Well, as much as we all disagreed on various different points, I think one thing we can agree on is that it's not for everybody. So
no, hell no.
As evidenced, yeah.
But that's fine.
Yeah, exactly. All right, well, anyway, we need to get a move on and pick our game for next month. But before we do, we announced last month's Party Game of the Month segment that we're running a new contest. So basically, we want people to submit as many new game ideas as possible. And from the pool of entries submitted, we are going to be picking a winner each month to receive a copy of the game that we have just reviewed. So Jam, who is tonight's winner that we have picked to get a free copy of Cultist Simulator?
The winner that rolled up was Simon Adicott. Congrats, Simo.
Yay!
So now we've got someone
We'll
else
get
we
that
can
copy to you.
get thoughts from the game from as well and see where they are.
Yeah.
It's going to be super interesting. Yeah, cool. So if you want to send us a suggestion for next pool of games on the list, Matt, where can they send that to, and what kind of suggestions are we looking for?
So your suggestions must actually be released. Please don't suggest coming soon games to us. They must be mobile, PC, or multi-platform. We don't want anything that's a console exclusive because we may not all have that console. It has to be a maximum of US $30, basically $30 US. It must be able to get. We must be able to get a good impression from it just in the first few hours of play. So nothing where, at the 7-hour mark, we're finally through that opening cutscene, because that's not a great, it's not a great start. And send suggestions to us via email, Twitter, or Facebook. And you can do so at mail@partyloaded.com is our email address. Our Facebook is partyloaded. Our Twitter is @partyloadedshow. And you can also catch us on YouTube at Channel Endgame and on Twitch sometimes at /partyloaded.
Nice and easy.
Cool.
All right, Jam, you've got the random number generator for us tonight, so let's close the dock down. And
have already did like 5 minutes ago and forgot what I was supposed to be talking about.
All right, give that bad boy a whirl. What do we got?
Alrighty. Number 2.
2. All right. She's going to be super happy about this one.
What is it? C.
So this is
Suggested by Mimo.
Yeah, this is. I think this is going to be some fun. Just quickly bringing up
I'm looking it up. So it's $10 US, made by Brain and Brain, and it's a branching folktale adventure game about the misadventures of a trio of large bearded fishermen.
I am so down.
Yeah.
Ooh, it's on PlayStation Vita. I can use my Vita again.
Oh wow!
It says it's halfway between a visual novel and point-and-click adventure, and the branching story carries its ungainly heroes into waters where lurk creatures from Scandinavian folklore and other misadventures. You play as a storyteller and wayfinder, shaping a custom tale that begins again where it ends.
So how many
that's
pigeons
really
are in this
cool.
game?
Single player,
Are there
is
any
it?
pigeons in this game? No?
Dunno.
Good. All right, I'm
Dunno,
down.
but single player. Yep, it's a single player.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. I thought this was multiplayer one. All right, cool. Well, there you go. So that's going to be
love the art style.
very different to Cultist Simulator. So nice palette cleanser. Yeah. There you go. All right, so we're going to be playing Burly Men at Sea throughout the rest of the month, and to review at the end of September is the month we're in. Yeah. Holy moly. All right.
Yeah.
Cool. So, that is a wrap, pretty much. So, thanks, everybody, for going mad with us, talking about cultists and all things, eldritch and arcane. And thanks, Mimo, for that game suggestion. That's fantastic. Congratulations to Simon. What have we got on in the immediate few days? Matt, I'm looking at the clock, we're about 3 hours away from Forsaken. Are you going to bother staying up late for this thing? Is that?
I don't know if I'll play it tonight. We'll see what happens. I'll probably end out finishing out this call and booting up either 2 Point Hospital again or World of Warcraft, one or the other. We'll see which one wins out.
Nice.
But yeah, there's also Spider-Man coming up in the next week, isn't there?
3 days. Yep.
No. Why is it all happening now?
My plan is to cram as much Forsaken in as possible over the next couple of nights, and then just Spider-Man till I'm dead over the weekend, essentially.
I will be definitely finishing off the Forsaken storyline. There's apparently already leaks out for the ending, which I've been trying to avoid.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah.
God.
But definitely Forsaken. Going to finish that storyline first.
Yeah. I got contacted by Mitch Lowe, one of our pals from the Pixel Sift podcast in Perth. They're going to be jumping on and doing some Forsaken on stream tomorrow night, so I'm going to hop on and join them and have some fun. So that should be a good time.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. What about you guys? Jam, Christian, what's your focus?
More Hollow Knight and Spider-Man when it's out.
Yeah, nice. Jam, you've
I saw
got a ton of stuff.
I saw a 10-minute video of someone just swinging through the city as Spider-Man the other day, which pushed me ever so closer. And after that photo mode talk, I'm like, oh, it just looks like such a cool place to explore.
Yeah.
I'm probably going to cave. But I've been playing a lot of Overwatch, so I'm sure I will continue. And all the bits and pieces, some more Scum, For the King,
Yeah.
Cultist Simulator. So many games.
Yeah.
I will be picking up Cultist Simulator again. I'm gonna do what Christian said. I'm also gonna have a Word document open and take notes.
Yeah.
We can do a brief follow-up at the top of next week's show and see if we've got any new revelations about that game and what we've experienced.
Yeah.
All right.
For sure.
Well, anyway, stay tuned for that next step in the story. But until next week, that is us. Thanks for listening, and good night.
Good night.
Bye.
The Party Loaded podcast is a Channel Endgame production. For this and more great gaming content, bookmark channelendgame.com.